So, good day everyone. I am Ana FABITHA B. Flores, and I will be discussing about Chapter 10, Deductions from the Gross Income, particularly from special types of capital losses to deductions for mixed income. Let us proceed. Itemized deduction. So, itemized deduction is under the kinds of deductions from the gross income. So, under the itemized deductions, there are interest, taxes, which were already discussed by the previous reporter, and I will be discussing about the losses, bad debts, depreciation, depletion, charitable contributions, research and development, contribution to pension trusts, and petroleum payments on health and or hospitalization insurance. So before going to special types of capital losses, let us first define what is capital losses. So capital losses are losses arising from the sale of capital assets. So nangyayari ang capital losses if halimbawa nagbenta ka ng capital asset mo, tapos yung amount ng pagbenta mo is mas maliit doon sa original amount ng capital asset mo. So, yun yung losses na makuha mo sa capital asset. So, capital losses are deductible only to the extent of capital gains. So, kapag walang capital gains, hindi deductible yung capital losses mo. Next, special types of capital losses. So, dito sa special types of capital losses, ito yung losses that can be claimed as deduction in some scenarios. So, may certain situation lang na pwede ma-deduct itong losses na to. So, these are situations that allowed by law to be deducted other than ordinary losses. So, other than yung losses na related sa trade or business mo. So, under the special types of capital losses, meron tayong wash sales, short sales, shrinkage in the value of stocks, wagering losses, and loss on merger or consolidation. So let us first go to wash. So under wash sales, in case of any loss claimed to have been sustained from any sale or other disposition of shares of stock or securities, shall not be deductible. So, hindi siya madideduct if, number 1, the seller is not a dealer in securities. So, kapag ang seller na hindi niya nature yung pagdideal ng securities, hindi siya deductible. And number 2, it should be within a period of 30 days before the sale, ending 30 days after the sale. The seller either acquired by purchase or exchange stock or securities identical to the stock or securities sold. And B has entered into contract or option to acquire stock or securities identical to the stock or securities sold. So, explain natin. So, kunwari, bumili ka ng shares ni Jollibee. Tapos, nakita mo, bumaba yung value. So, ibinenta mo. Tapos, bumili ka ulit ng bago, pero shares ulit ni Jollibee. So, ibig sabihin, identical shares pa rin yung binili mo. So, hindi mo intention na pakawalan yung investment, but you take advantage of the fluctuation ng market. So, related pa rin siya sa stocks mo. So, within a period of 30 days before the sale, ending 30 days after the sale. So, ibig sabihin, yung masyadong maikli, yung panahon ng pagbenta mo, kasi 30 days lang yung pagitan, at yung pagbili ng bagong share of stock na substantially identical doon sa ibebenta mo. So, yun yung sa wash sale. The rationale for non-deductibility of loss from wash sale is that the loss is not actually sustained or incurred by the seller. So, it is only an artificial loss. So, non-deductible yung loss kapag hindi naman talaga na-incur ng seller yung loss. So, artificial lang siya. Substantially identical securities indicate stocks or securities of the same class or similar under important features like bonds where the only difference is the date of maturity. So the following exchanges of non-identical securities are not subject to rules on wash sale. So ito yung mga hindi subject sa rules or hindi applicable sa rules on wash sales. So ang common stock to preferred stock, voting stock to non-voting stock, stock of one corporation to stock of another corporation, and bonds that differ in terms and conditions such as interest rates and debenture and non-debenture bonds. So, kapag yung individual corporation acting as dealers in stocks or securities, so, kasi dealer siya in stock and securities, so, hindi na siya subject to the rules on wash sale. Kasi nga, sa wash sale, dapat hindi dealer ng securities or stock yung seller. Let us proceed. So, let us go to illustration number 8. So, ABC, whose taxable year is the calendar year, on December 1, 2020, purchased 100 shares of common stock of XYZ Company for 100,000, and on December 15, 2020, purchased 100 additional shares for 90,000 pesos. So, ano ba siya? Consider ba siya or maka-classified ba siya as loss on wash sale? So, tingnan natin. So, since the transaction is within the 61-day period, or yung 61-day period, also known as yung period beginning 30 days before the date of such sale or disposition and ending 30 days after such date. So, since yung transaction is within 61-day period from December 1, 2020 to January 2, 2021, so yung loss na 10,000, which is derived from the 90,000 less cost of 100,000, should be classified as loss on wash sale, which is non-deductible loss under the tax code. ABC, whose taxable year is the calendar year, on September 21, 2020, purchased 100 shares of the common stock of XYZ Company for 50,000 pesos. On December 21, 2020, ABC purchased 50,000 of substantially identical stock for 27,500 pesos, and on December 6, 2020, 25 additional shares of such stock for 11,250 pesos. On January 2, 2021, it sold for 40,000 pesos rather. The 100 shares purchased on September 21, 2020. So, there is an indicated loss of 10,000 on the sale of 100 shares, which is derived from the cost of 50,000 versus the 40,000 pesos. So, ABC purchased a total of 75 substantially identical additional shares within the 61-day period from December 21 and 26, 2020 to January 2, 2021. So, since within sa 61-day period siya, so therefore, a portion of 10,000 indicated loss should be classified as loss on wash sale and the remaining portion as deductible capital loss. So, dito sa case B, so meron lang portion na ma-indicate as wash sale kasi nga 75 shares lang yung substantially identical. So let us see. Selling price for 100 shares is 40,000 pesos. Then cost of 100 shares acquired on September 21, 2020 is 50,000 pesos, which resulted to loss on the 100 shares sold for 10,000 pesos. So 75 shares should pertain to acquisition within the prohibited period, 50 shares on December 21 and 25 shares on December 26. So the loss attributable to the 75 shares is loss on wash sale. So 10,000 loss times 75 divided 100 kasi 100 shares yung nabenta, pero 75 lang yung within the period. So, 7,500 pesos, which is non-deductible. So, 7,500 lang yung non-deductible. The remaining 2,500 loss should be classified as capital loss, which is deductible only from capital gains, if any. So, yun. Since within the period yung 75 shares, 61-day period, so, yun lang yung ika-classify natin as non-deductible on wash sale. So, yung remaining na 2,500, classified siya as capital loss, which is deductible only from capital gains if merong capital gains. AC. Yi Jin is not a dealer in securities. In 2021, he had the following transactions on ordinary shares of JJ Corporation, a domestic corporation. So, on January 12, purchased 100 shares for 100,000 pesos. On June 20, sold the shares purchased on January 12 for 80,000 pesos. On June 30, purchased 70 shares for 50,000. On October 15, sold the shares purchased on June 30 for 75,000. So, question number 1, how much was the loss on wash sale? So, selling price for 80,000 pesos rather, less cost of 100,000 pesos, which resulted to loss of 20,000 pesos. So, yung loss na 20,000 pesos, hindi yan lahat mapupunta doon sa loss on wash sale. Kasi nga, 70 shares lang yung na-acquired within the prohibited period na 61-day rule. So, yun lang yung mapupunta doon sa loss on wash sale. So, 70 shares divided 100 shares multiplied by 20,000 pesos is equals to 14,000 pesos. So, yung makaklassify lang as loss on wash sale, doon sa 20,000 pesos is only 14,000 pesos. Question number 2, how much was the capital loss? So, magkano yung capital loss? 30 shares kasi nga yun lang yung naiwan sa 100 minus 70 shares na loss on wash sale. So yung naiwan yun yung capital loss. So 30 shares divided 100 shares multiplied by 20,000 pesos is equal to 6,000 pesos. So kung ano yung naiwan na hindi kasali dun sa loss on wash sale, yun yung loss on capital loss. KC. Yi Jin is not a dealer in securities. In 2021, he had the following transaction on ordinary shares of JJ Corporation, a domestic corporation. So, same situation doon sa kanina. So, binasa ko ulit. Question number 3, how much was the cost of shares purchased on June 30? So, magkano yung cost of shares purchased? Plus yung loss on wash sale na nakuha natin doon sa question number 1. So, you just add. So, yung result nun, which is the cost basis, is 64,000 pesos. Question number 4. How much was the capital gain on sale of shares on October 15? So, magkano yung capital gain on sale of shares? Price na 75,000 from the October 15 na binenta mo na shares. Tapos, less the 64,000 na cost basis na nakuha mo doon sa question number 3. That result to gain on sale of 11,000 pesos. So, yun lang yung pagkuha ng capital gain on sale. Selling price minus cost is equals to gain on sale na 11,000 pesos. So, short sale. Sale of stocks within the seller short sale is the sale of stocks which the seller does not own. So, ito yung binanta mo na stock na hindi naman sa'yo. So, yun nga, yung short sale, yun yung binanta mo na stock na hindi naman sa'yo. Kasi nga, naniniwala ka na bababa yung price ng stock. So, if mag-drop yung price ng stock, so you can buy the stock at a lower price and makakuha ka ng profit. Pero, kung yung price naman ng stock tumaas, bibilin mo ulit at a higher price, so you will incur loss. So, short sale is an obligation payable in kinds or goods. So, yun nga sinabi ko yung price, kapag tumaas, mag-incur ka ng capital loss kasi nga, bibilin mo siya ulit. So, tapos kapag nag-decrease naman yung price, makakuha ka naman ng profit or makakakuha ka ng capital gain. Next, so treatment of gain or loss on wash sale and short sale. So, under wash sale, kapag sa gain, treated siya as capital gain, which is taxable. Kapag sa loss naman, non-deductible siya and should form part of the cost of subsequent acquisitions. Under naman sa short sale, kapag sa gain, treated siya as capital gain pa rin and taxable. And kapag sa loss, treated as capital loss which can be deducted from capital gains only. So, yun yung kaibahan ng treatment ng wash sale sa short sale. Next, so let us go to illustration number 9. So, Nahidu speculated that the fair values of San Miguel shares will decrease within the week due to an adverse business deal entered into by San Miguel. Yurim, unaware of the situation, was lured by Nahidu to buy San Miguel shares at 100,000 pesos per share for later delivery. If the fair value of shares increased to 125,000 pesos per share at the time Nahidu acquires San Miguel shares for delivery to Yurim, Nahidu incurs a capital loss of 5 per share. On the other hand, if the fair value of the shares becomes 110 per share as Nahidu anticipated, she should recognize a capital gain on short sale at 10 per share. So, dito. Si Nahidu daw. Nilord niya si Yurim na bilhin yung shares ng San Miguel. So, if yung fair value ng shares is mag-increase ng 125 per share, at the time na in-acquire yun ni Nahidu, mag-incur ng capital loss si Nahidu ng 5 kasi nga 120 minus 125 equals 5. On the other hand, if yung fair value naman ng shares maging 110, tapos binili ulit yun ni Nahidu, makaka-recognize siya ng capital gain on short sale at 10 per share. Pumunta naman tayo sa shrinkage in the value of stocks. So shrinkage in the value of stocks. This is the decline in value of stocks through market fluctuation. So, bumababa ang value ng stocks. Yun yung shrinkage in value of stocks. So, halimbawa, yung entity maaring naka-invest sa shares of stock traded sa stock market. Tapos yung market value ay pwedeng mag-fluctuate every day if bumababa ang value. So, yun yung shrinkage in value. Shrinkage in the value of stocks. So, itong shrinkage in the value of stock, ito yung decline in value of stocks through market fluctuation. So, bumababa ang value ng stocks. So, halimbawa, ang entity maaring naka-invest sa shares of stock na traded sa stock market. So, yung market value ay pwedeng mag-fluctuate every day. So, if bumababa yung market value, yun yung tinatawag na shrinkage in value. So, halimbawa na lang yung sa Bitcoin, iba pa bago-bago yung value. So, if bumababa yung value, yun yung shrinkage in value of stocks. So, there are two requisites for deductibility as of the shrinkage in the value of stocks. So, number one, the securities are ascertained to be worthless. So, dapat yung securities ay wala talagang value. And number two, the taxpayer claiming the capital loss should not be a bank or a trust company incorporated under Philippine laws. So, yung taxpayer na mag-claim ng capital loss ay dapat hindi siya bank, or on the other hand, any amount claimed as a loss on account of shrinkage in value of the stock through fluctuation in the market or otherwise cannot be deducted from gross income for tax purposes because it is not realized. So, kung mag-claim ka ng loss na hindi mo naman talaga na-incur o hindi naman talaga na-realize, so, hindi yun siya pwedeng ma-claim as deductible sa gross income mo. Dito na tayo sa wagering losses. So, wagering losses, these are the losses from transaction where outcome is dependent upon chance. So, from the word wage, which is pusta, so nagpusta ang entity, tapos natalo. So, yung talo na yun yung wagering losses. And then losses from wagering transactions shall be allowed only to the extent of the gains from such transactions. So, kung meron kang, halimbawa, panalo dun sa pustahan mo, pwede mong ibawas dun yung talo mo. Pero kung wala ka namang gain or mas malaki yung talo mo kasi sa panalo mo, so hindi siya makiklaim as a loss. Next. So, loss on merger or consolidation. So, let us first define merger and consolidation. So, a merger is a contractual and statutory process by which one corporation, the surviving corporation, acquires all of the assets and liabilities of another corporation. So, dito sa merger, halimbawa si Company A at Company B nag-merge. So, isang entity lang yung magso-survive. Tapos, yung isang entity naman ay magsi-cease to exist. So, Company A plus Company B equals Company A or Company B. Consolidation. So, consolidation is a contractual and statutory process by which two or more corporations jointly become a completely new corporation. So, dito naman sa consolidation, si Company A at Company B, di ba, nag-consolidate sila. Magpo-form na sila ng bagong corporation na naman. So, mawawala na yung Company at Company B kasi nga, mag-recreate na sila ng bagong company, which is yung Company A plus Company B equals Company C. The next, in the loss on merger or consolidation, so no loss is recognized in a merger or consolidation involving an exchange of stock solely for stock or security solely for security or stock. So, wala kang i-recognize na loss dito sa merger or consolidation. Instead, only gain is recognized when in addition to stock, cash, and or property is received. And dapat yung gain to be recognized shall not exceed the cash and or fair market value of property received. So, mag-recognize ka ng gain lang yung i-recognize mo dito in addition dun sa stock and cash or property na na-receive mo. Tapos, dapat yung gain na i-recognize mo, dapat nakalimit lang doon sa value ng cash or property na na-receive mo. So, para maintindihan natin, let's go to illustration number 10. So, case A, Bora Company was merged into Wunho Company, and only Wunho Company continued to exist. So, Paul, a shareholder of Bora Company, was asked to surrender his 100 shares of Bora Company that he acquired for 90,000 pesos and receive under the merger 100 shares of Wunho Company with a fair market value of 150,000 and cash of 30,000 pesos and a property valued at 10,000 pesos. So Wunhu shares were subsequently sold at 110,000 pesos. Question number 1. How much should Paul recognize as gain from the merger? So, fair value of shares received equals 150,000 pesos. I-add mo yung cash and property received na 40,000 pesos with a total of 90,000, 190,000 pesos rather. Then, yung cost of shares surrendered, i-minus mo 90,000 pesos with a total of indicated gain na 100,000 pesos. Itong 100,000 pesos na to, hindi ito yung lahat i-recognize mo as gain. Kasi nga, sabi 'di ba, yung gain na i-recognize mo dapat is limited to the amount of cash and property received. So since yung cash and property received is 30,000 plus 10 equals to 40,000, so yung ma-recognize mo lang na gain ay 40,000 lang. Question number 2. What is the adjusted cost basis of Wunhu shares received? So, cost of shares surrendered is 90,000. Ilas mo yung cash and property received na 40,000 pesos with a total of 50,000 pesos. Tapos, i-add mo naman yung gain na na-recognize mo na 40,000 pesos equal to 90,000 pesos. So, ang adjusted cost basis of shares received na ni Wunhu is 90,000 pesos. Question 3. How much should Paul recognize as gain from sale of Wunhu shares? So, magkano? So, para makuha, selling price for Wunhu shares, 110,000 pesos, less yung cost of Wunhu shares na 90,000 pesos. So, meron ng gain on sale of Wunhu shares na 20,000 pesos. So, ma-recognize mo siya kasi nga, 20,000 pesos within the 40,000 pesos na limitation siya. Case B. Assume the same data in Case A except that the fair market value of Wunhu shares was 30,000 pesos. Assume further that the Wunhu shares were subsequently sold at 80,000 pesos. So question 1. How much should Paul recognize as gain or loss from the transactions? So fair value of shares received 30,000 pesos, i-add mo yung cash and property received na 40,000 pesos with a total of 70,000 pesos. Tapos i-deduct mo yung cost of shares surrendered na 90,000 pesos na mag-result naman ng indicated loss na 20,000 pesos. So di ba nga sabi doon na no loss is recognized in a merger or consolidation. So ibig sabihin wala tayong i-recognize dito na loss. Ay wala tayong i-recognize dito na gain kasi nga, loss siya. Loss yung result niya. So, hindi naman tayo mag-recognize ng loss. Tapos, kung merong loss, ibig sabihin naman na walang gain. So, zero siya. Case B. Assume the same data in Case A except that the fair market value of Wunhu shares was 30,000 pesos. Assume further that the Wunhu shares were subsequently sold at 80,000 pesos. So, question 2. What is the adjusted cost basis of Wunhu shares received? So ano yung adjusted cost basis of Wunhu? So, para makuha, cost of shares surrender, 90,000 pesos. Ilas mo yung cash and property received na 40,000 with a total of 50,000 pesos. So, since wala naman tayong gain na na-recognize doon, so 0 siya plus 0. So, yung adjusted cost basis of shares received is 50,000 pesos. Question 3. How much should Paul recognize as gain from sale of Wunhu shares? So, selling price of Wunhu shares is 80,000 pesos. Ilas mo yung cost of Wunhu shares na 50,000. Gain on sale of Wunhu shares, 30,000 pesos na. So, ito na tayo sa other types of losses. So, ito yung mga other types of losses. Number 1, losses due to voluntary removal of incident to renewal or replacements, deductible expense from gross income. So, dito sa losses due to voluntary removal of building, from the word voluntary, so, intentionally mo siyang ginawa. Kasi, halimbawa, meron kang machinery, tapos sabi mo hindi mo nagagamitin, or meron kang building, tapos dinimolish mo dahil nga gusto mong palitan. So, yung renewal or replacement na yun, ikaw mismo yung gumawa or dahilan, makiklaim yun as deduction. Number 2, loss of useful value of capital assets due to charges in business conditions, deductible expense, only to the extent of actual loss sustained after adjustments for improvement, depreciation, and salvage value. So yung loss naman, due to change in business conditions, change yan siya. So, yung isang asset mo ay bumaba ang value kasi nga nabago ang business condition. So, it can be claimed as deduction. So, kunwari, may binibenta ka na product, tapos yung pambalot mo dun sa binibenta mo na product ay plastic. Tapos, naglabas ng ordinance na bawal na ang plastic, lahat ay papel na. So, kunwari wala kang alternative, wala kang ibang alternative dun sa plastic na yun. So, yung ginamit mo na pambalot, since wala naman siyang alternative, so, wala na ring value yung binibenta mo kasi nga, hindi mo na siya mabenta kasi wala ka namang alternative na pambalot. So, magkiklaim yun as a deduction. Isang, halimbawa pa, kunwari, gumamit ka ng isang old machinery, tapos, nag-phase out na siya, napalitan na ng computer. So, hindi na siya magagamit. So, magkiklaim yun as a deduction. So, number 3, abandonment losses in petroleum operations. So, abandonment losses. So, from the word abandonment. So, hindi mo na itinuloy yung project or inabandon na mo na. Yung nakapitalize na related sa exploration or related sa activity mo doon sa binandon na mo na project, those can be claimed as deduction. Then number 4, losses arising from a failure to exercise an option money to buy a capital property shall be treated by the buyer as a capital loss. Likewise, the seller shall consider the same as capital gain. Then, ito naman tayo sa non-deductible losses. So, ito yung mga indicated losses na hindi pwede na i-deduct or hindi madideduct. So, losses not incurred in trade, profession, or business or in any transaction entered into for profit. So, itong losses na hindi mo na i-incur sa trade in business. So, dapat yung losses na ma-incur mo, yun lang yung deductible. Kapag yung losses na incur mo siya sa trade or business. So, kung hindi siya na-incur sa trade or business, hindi siya deductible. Number 2, losses from sales or exchanges of property entered into between related taxpayers. Not deductible as provided under Section 36 of the Tax Code, but the gains are taxable. So, yung mga losses sa sales between related taxpayer, halimbawa, related taxpayer, related relatives mo, nagbenta ka doon sa relatives mo ng property mo. Tapos, syempre, given na relative mo siya, so, binabaan mo yung presyo. Kasi nga, basta relative may discount, ganyan. So, hindi yun siya pwedeng ma-deduct as losses. Pero yung gains, taxable yun. Number 3, losses from exchanges of property in a corporate readjustment. Losses from illegal transaction, kasi nga illegal. Loss on voluntary removal of building on land purchased with a view to erect another building. Such loss shall form part of the cost of the new building to be erected. Next, bad debts. So, itong bad debts, ito yung mga utang na hindi mo na makakollect or worthless na siya kasi wala na siyang value, hindi na siya makakollect or uncollectible na siya. So, in general, debts due to the taxpayer actually ascertained to be worthless and charged off within the taxable year, except those not connected with profession, trade, or business, and those sustained in a transaction entered into between related parties, mentioned under Section 36B of the Tax Code, and as discussed in the foregoing topics are deductible, provided further that recovery of bad debts previously allowed as deduction in the preceding years shall be included as part of the gross income in the year of recovery to the extent of the income tax benefit of said deduction. So, in general daw, yung mga utang na due to taxpayer na sure na talaga na worthless, wala ng value, at na charge off na siya within taxable year, except na lang kung hindi siya connected sa trade or business or except kung between siya sa related parties, deductible yung utang na yun. Charging off of an account should be made by removing the worthless accounts from the books of accounts in the year that the debt is ascertained to be worthless. Hence, reserve or provision for bad debts are not allowed as deduction from gross income because the mere setting up of reserves will not give rise to any deduction under Section 34E of the Code. Hence, only the direct method or write-off method of accounting for bad debt is allowed for tax purposes. So, worthlessness is determined upon the exercise of sound business judgment based on the particular facts and circumstances of the case. To be considered worthless, it must be uncollectible even in the future. So, yun nga yung sinabi ko. Para determine siya as worthless, so dapat uncollectible siya even on the future. So, bago tayo pumunta sa criteria in determining worthlessness of receivables, pumunta muna tayo sa requisites for deductibility sa bad debts. So, number 1, the debt must be valid and subsisting. So, dapat valid siya. Number 2, the debt must be connected with the taxpayer's trade or business and is not between related parties. So, yun nga, dapat connected or related siya sa business ni taxpayer. So, kung hindi siya connected, hindi siya pwedeng i-deduct. Tapos, kung between naman siya sa related parties, hindi siya pwedeng i-deduct. Number 3, there is an actual ascertainment that the debt is worthless. So, ito na nga, dapat sure ka na yung mga utang ay worthless na o wala ng value. So, para malaman natin, paano ba i-determine kung worthless na ba siya? So, merong criteria in determining worthlessness of receivables. Number 1, taxpayer did in fact ascertain that the debt is worthless in the year for which the deduction was sought and that in so doing, he acted in good faith. So, assure na si taxpayer na yung utang na yun ay wala ng value. In-assure na niya na wala ng value. So, number 2, the account is not supported by a guarantor or surety. At wala ding nagagarantor dun sa utang na yun. So, ibig sabihin kung ma-meet yung itong dalawang rule, ibig sabihin worthless na yung receivables na yun. And number 4, the debt is charged off within the taxable year. Yung debt na yun ay na-charge off na sa taxable year or nabawas na siya. And then, depreciation. So, what is depreciation? Depreciation is a reduction in the value of an asset with the passage of time due in particular to wear and tear. So, ang depreciation, ito yung yung property mo or yung tangible property mo na palagi mong ginagamit ay unti-unti nang bumababa ang kanyang monetary value. So, may hangganan yung property na yon. So, general rule, there shall be allowed as a depreciation deduction a reasonable allowance for the exhaustion, wear and tear, including reasonable allowance for obsolescence of property used in the trade or business. In the case of property held by one person for life, with remainder to another person, the deduction shall be computed as if the life tenant were the absolute owner of the property and shall be allowed to the life tenant. In the case of property held in trust, the allowable deduction shall be appointed between the income beneficiaries and the trustees in accordance with the pertinent provisions of the instrument creating the trust, or in the absence of such provisions, on the basis of the trust income allowable to each. So, ito sa depreciation, meron tayong requisites for deductibility. So, number 1, the allowance for the depreciation must be reasonable. So, yung allowance for depreciation, dapat reasonable siya. Reasonable yung amount na binabawas mo every year. And then number 2, it must be for property use for employment in trade or business or out if it's not being used temporarily during the year. So, dapat yung property na yun, ginagamit yun related sa trade or business mo. Number 3, the allowance must be charged off. The reasonable allowance may be either deducted directly from the book value of the asset or credited to an accumulated depreciation account. So, ma-charge off na siya. So, dapat totoong nabawas or naka-record ka na. Hindi pwedeng nagsabi ka lang na na-depreciate mo na kasi nga, hindi yun makiklaim. Dapat totoo talaga na na-charge off mo na siya. And number 4, schedule on the allowance must be attached to the return. So, in depreciation, meron tayong methods of computation and rates. So, number 1, straight line method. So, dito sa straight line method, pare-pareha ang i-charge every year. So, same amount. Tapos, sa declining balance method naman, rate should not exceed twice the rate in a straight line method. So, dito sa declining balance method, so, mas malaki yung depreciation nung unang taon kaysa sa next year or sa mga huling taon. So, tapos dapat yung rate dapat hanggang 200% lamang ng straight line, which is twice the rate sa straight line. Number 3 naman, parang same concept lang din sa declining balance method. Kasi nga, yung idea dito, mas mataas ang depreciation sa unang taon kaysa sa huli. Tapos may formula dito na bahagi ng accelerated method dito sa sum of the years digit method. Pero hindi na natin yung i-discuss. Then number 4, any other method which may be prescribed by the Secretary of Finance upon recommendation of the Commissioner. So, kung meron ka pang alam na iba pang method other than dun sa tatlo, na prescribed naman ng Secretary of Finance and recommended ng Commissioner, so pwede mo siyang gamitin. Pero kung nagamit ka ng other method na hindi naman prescribed, so hindi yun siya pwede. So, let us move on to depreciation of motor vehicles. So, number 1, no deduction from gross income for depreciation shall be allowed unless the taxpayer substantiates the purchase with sufficient evidence, such as official receipts or other adequate records which contain the following among others. So, walang deduction from gross income for depreciation for motor vehicles unless si taxpayer magbigay siya ng sufficient evidence katulad ng official receipts or other adequate records na nagko-contain ng A. Specific motor vehicle identification number, chassis number or other registrable identification numbers of vehicles. B. The total price of the specific vehicle subject to depreciation. And C. The direct connection or relation of the vehicle to the development, management, operation, and or conduct of the trade or business or profession of the taxpayer. So, dapat yung ipoprovide niya ng sufficient evidence, dapat naka-indicate tong tatlong to. Then number 2, only one vehicle for land transport is allowed for the use of an official or employee, the value of which should not exceed 2,400,000 pesos. So, isang vehicle lang yung gamit ng employer or official sa land transport. Tapos, dapat yung value nung vehicle na yun, hindi dapat siya maglampas sa 2,400,000. And number 3, no depreciation shall be allowed for yachts, helicopters, airplanes, and or aircrafts, and land vehicles which exceed the above threshold amount, unless the taxpayer's main line of business is transport operations or lease of transportation equipment and the vehicles purchased are used in said operations. So, walang depreciation na i-allow doon sa yachts, helicopters, airplanes, aircrafts, land vehicles kung nag-i-exceed siya doon sa threshold na 2,400,000. Unless nga lang, kung yung taxpayer, yun talaga yung nature ng business niya at ginagamit niya yung vehicle na yun in the operation. Number 4, all maintenance expenses on account of non-depreciable vehicles for taxation purposes are disallowed in its entirety. And number 5, the input taxes on the purchase of non-depreciable vehicles and all input taxes on maintenance expenses incurred thereon are likewise disallowed for taxation purposes. So, ito na tayo sa depreciation of properties used in petroleum operations. So, an allowance for depreciation in respect of all properties directly related to production of petroleum initially placed in service in a taxable year shall be allowed under the straight line or declining balance method of depreciation at the option of the service contractor. However, if the service contractor initially elects the declining method, it may at any subsequent date shift to the straight line method. So, ito na yun. Kapag yung properties ay directly related to production, pwede niyang gamitin yung straight line method or declining balance method. Provided na yung useful life to be used ay shorter period between 10 years or useful life. Kapag naman ang properties not directly related to production, only straight line method is allowed. So, kapag not directly related siya sa production, straight line method lang yung magagamit mo. Tapos, yung useful life is always presumed to be 5 years. So, if expected life of property is 10 years or less, kapag 10 years or mababa pa, so normal rate of depreciation ang magagamit mo. If naman, ang expected life is more than 10 years, so depreciated siya over any number of years between 5 years and the expected life. So, sa depreciation deductible by non-resident aliens engaged in trade or business or resident foreign corporation. So, in case of non-resident alien engaged in trade or business, in case of a non-resident alien individual engaged in trade or business or resident foreign corporation, a reasonable allowance for the deterioration of property arising out of its use or employment or its non-use is in the business, trade, or profession shall be permitted only when such property is located in the Philippines. So, in case sa NRA, ETB, or resident foreign corporation, ang depreciation ay maaalaw lang only kung yung property is nandito sa Philippines. So, next, depletion. Depletion of oil and gas wells and mines. So, what is depletion? So, depletion is the exhaustion of natural resources due to production that is allowed as deduction to recover costs of the property or wasting asset. So, ito yung exhaustion, yung pag-ubos ng natural resources due to production. So, nauubos ang natural resources. Tapos, i-allocate mo yung cost or other basis of wasting asset over the period the natural resources is extracted or produced. So, i-allocate mo siya sa panahon kung saan nakuha yung natural resources. So, in case of oil and gas wells or mines, capital invested may be amortized using cost depletion method, provided, number 1, when allowance for depletion shall equal capital invested, no further allowance shall be granted. After production in commercial quantities has commenced, intangible exploration and development drilling costs shall be treated as follows. So, kapag after production in commercial quantities has commenced, yung intangible exploration and drilling costs, it siya as number 1. If incurred for non-producing wells and or mines, yung treatment niya, deductible in the year incurred. Number 2, kapag incurred for producing wells and or mines, merong option ang taxpayer. Option 1, deductible in full in the year, paid or incurred. So, pwede niyang i-deduct in full. Or option 2, pwede niyang i-capitalize or i-amortize. So, no reduction of cost or value of natural resources when converted into inventories. So, itong intangible exploration and development cost. Ito yung cost na incur mo doon sa halimbawa, kung sakaling mag-aani ka ng oil or ginto, so, di ba, hindi naman doon magtatapos yung sa pag-aani lang, hindi naman matatapos doon yung gagawin mo. So, di ba, maghuhukay ka pa, maghanap ka pa ng lugar kung saan meron talagang mina ng ginto. So, yun yung intangible expiration cost. Tapos, yung development cost naman, ito yung, or development or drilling cost, ito yung kasi nga, drilling siya kasi kukunin siya sa ilalim ng lupa. So, yung development, ito yung cost na na-incur mo sa pag-develop nung nakita mo na mine, yung nakita mo na mina. Kasi nga, hindi mo naman gusto na dun lang, na yun lang yung state nung nakita mo na, so, na mina, so i-develop mo siya. So, yun yung development cost. I'm sorry, parang medyo yata ako. So, let us proceed. So, depletion of oil and gas wells and mines. So, any intangible exploration, drilling, and development expenses allowed as a deduction in computing taxable income during the year shall not be taken into consideration in computing the adjusted cost basis. So, hindi kasali. Hindi ko considerate sa pag-compute ng adjusted cost basis yung intangible exploration, drilling, and development expenses. So, in case of NRA-ETB or non-resident alien engaged in trade or business or resident foreign corporation, depletion shall be allowed only if the oil and gas wells or mines are located in the Philippines. So, kapag hindi siya located sa Philippines, hindi siya ma-allow as deduction. So next, election to deduct exploration and development expenditures. So let us first define exploration expenditures. So ano ko na siya kanina, na-explain ko na, pero ito talaga yung definition. So expenditures paid or incurred for the purpose of ascertaining the existence, location, extent, or quality of any deposit of one or other mineral, and paid or incurred before the beginning of the development stage of the mine or deposit. So, ito yung na-incur mo na expenses na for the purpose of sa paghahanap nung pwede mong imina or pagmiminahan mo. So, binhanap mo pa yung location kung saan pwede. So, before pa ito nung pag-develop mo doon sa mine or deposit. Ito namang development expenditures, ito yung expenditures paid or incurred during the development stage of the mine or other natural deposits. So, election to deduct exploration and development expenditures, so irrevocable and shall be binding in succeeding taxable years. So, kung naka-elect ka na i-deduct yung exploration and development expenditure, so irrevocable na yun siya, hindi mo na yun siya mababawi. Tapos, binding pa siya hanggang sa succeeding taxable years. So, ito yung computation of taxable income from mining operations. So, at the option of the taxpayer, pwede niyang i-deduct ang exploration and development expenditures accumulated as cost or adjusted basis for cost depletion. Or letter B, exploration and development expenditures paid and incurred during taxable year. So note, amount shall not exceed 25% of the net income from mining operations without benefit of the tax incentives. So dapat yung amount hindi siya mag-exceed sa 25% of the net income from mining operations. Siyempre without of any tax incentives. Then, para actual exploration and development expenditure minus 25% of net income. So, ito yung i-carried forward mo to the succeeding years until ma-fully deducted na siya. Then, para makuha ang net income, so gross income minus allowable deduction equals net income. Tapos, under naman sa allowable deduction, nandyan ang mining, milling, and marketing expenses, and depreciation of properties directly used in mining operations. So, dito na tayo sa abandonment losses. So in the event a contract area where petroleum operations are undertaken is partially or wholly abandoned, all accumulated exploration and development expenditures pertaining thereto shall be allowed as deduction. So kung yung petroleum operations mo inabandona mo na partially or wholly, yung na-accumulate mo na expenses sa exploration and development, allowable for deduction yun siya. And number 2, in case a producing well is subsequently abandoned, the unamortized cost thereof as well as the undepreciated cost of equipment directly used therein shall be allowed as deduction. So kapag yung producing well inabandona mo, yung unamortized cost doon at yung undepreciated cost of equipment na directly used, allowable din yun siya as deduction. So, let's go to charitable and other contributions. So, in general, contributions or gifts actually paid or made within the taxable year or for the use of the government of the Philippines or any of its agencies or any political subdivision thereof, exclusively for public purposes or to accredited domestic corporations or associations organized and operated exclusively for religious, charitable, scientific, youth and sports development, cultural or educational purposes, or for the rehabilitation of veterans, or to social welfare institutions, or to non-government organizations, in accordance with rules and regulations promulgated by the Secretary of Finance upon recommendation of the Commissioner, no part of the net income of which inures to the benefit of any private stockholder or individual in an amount not in excess of 10% in the case of an individual and 5% in the case of a corporation, of the taxpayer's taxable income derived from trade, business, or profession as computed without the benefit of this and the following subparagraph. So, contributions deductible from gross income may be deductible in full or subject to limitation depending upon the organization to which the donation is given. So the amount of any contribution of property other than money shall be based on the acquisition cost of the said property. So, before ko explain yung mga contributions na deductible in full and subject to limitation, so meron naman tayong table 9-4. So, uunahin ko muna yung requisites for deductibility. So, number 1, the contribution or gift must be actually paid. So, dapat totoong nangyari na nabigay mo yung contribution or gift na yon. Number 2, it must be given to organizations specified by law. So, hindi naman lahat ng tinulungan mo, hindi naman ibig sabihin nun nung yung itinulong mo, diba, nagtulong ka sa isang organization or isang particular group, tapos hindi naman naka-specified sa law or hindi naman sinabi ng law na pwede siya sa deduction. So, hindi yun. Hindi siya allowed as deduction. Number 3, it must be within the taxable year. And 4, the net income of the institution must not inure to the benefit of any private individual or shareholder. So, kapag benefit yon ng private individual, hindi na yun siya ma-consider as allowable deduction. Then, number 5, the taxpayer claiming the deduction must be engaged in trade, practice, or profession or business. So, dapat yung taxpayer na mag-claim ng deduction na yon, dapat related siya or nag-engage siya sa trade, practice of profession or practice of profession or business. So, kung nagbigay ka, there must be notice of donation sa BIR. Then, valuation in case of donation of non-cash property. So, the amount of any charitable contribution of property other than money shall be based on the acquisition cost. So, kapag yung nagbigay ka, hindi in cash, rather in non-cash property, so i-base yun sa acquisition cost. So ito na yung table 9-4. So, dito sa table 9-4, makikita dito yung contribution na pwede i-deduct in full at yung mga contribution naman na subject to limitations. So, dito sa deductible in full. So, number 1, donation to the government of the Philippines, any of its agencies and political subdivisions or fully owned government corporations to be used exclusively in undertaking priority activities in. So, dito sa number 1, donations to the government ito or to the government corporations. Use exclusively, exclusive siya. So, may mga priority activities na nakalagay dito. So, dapat included dito or under dito yung activities para ma-consider siya as deductible in full. So, number 1, the education. Number 2, health. 3, youth and sports development. Number 4, human settlements. Number 5, science and culture. And number 6, economic development. Number 2, donations to certain foreign institutions or international organizations in compliance with agreements, treaties, or special laws. So, yung donation naman sa certain, hindi lahat ng foreign corporation or institutions ay pwedeng ma-deduct in full. Kasi nga, meron ng certain na inalaw yung law na foreign institution na pwedeng ma-deduct in full. Then, provided no part of the net income of above accredited NGOs must inure to the benefit of any private individual. The donation must be utilized not later than the 50th day of the third month following the close of the taxable year. So, dapat yung donation na yun magamit na not later than 50th day of the third month. Then, the administrative expense must conform with the rules and regulations to be prescribed by the Secretary of Finance upon recommendation of the Commissioner, but in no case to exceed 30% of total expenses. So, yung mga administrative expenses, dapat naka-conform or nakasunod doon sa rules and regulations na prescribed by the Secretary of Finance. Then, the assets of which, in the event of dissolution, would be distributed to another domestic corporation organized for similar purposes, to the state for public purposes, or another organization to be used in such manner as in the judgment of the court shall best accomplish the general purpose for which the dissolved organization was organized. So, balik tayo dun sa so, yun yung mga deductible in full na donations or charitable donations. Then, balik tayo sa subject to limitations. So, number 1, donations to the government of the Philippines or political subdivision for exclusively public purposes. So, kung exclusively siya for public purposes, so subject siya to limitations. Then, number 2, donations to domestic corporations or associations operated exclusively for. So, dito naman, kung yung donation siya sa domestic corporation, naka-indicate ito yung mga associations na charitable, scientific, youth and sports development, cultural, educational purpose, rehabilitation of veterans, and social welfare institution. Then, meron ding rate sa mga taxpayer na subject to limitations. So, these are the limit or allowable deduction. So, kung ang taxpayer ay corporation, yung rate niya is 5% na naka-base naman sa taxable income from trade, business, or profession before deducting contribution. Tapos, kung yung taxpayer naman ay individual, 10% yung rate, based pa rin sa taxable income from trade, business, or profession before deducting contribution. So, let us go to illustration 11 para mas maintindihan. So, case A, corporate taxpayer. A domestic corporation has the following data on income and expenses. So, ito na yun. Sales, 10 million. Cost of sales, 4 million. Operating expense, excluding contributions to the government and charitable institution, 3 million. Contributions to government for priority project in education, 200,000. Contributions to government for public purpose, 100,000. Contributions to domestic charitable organization, 100,000. Contributions to the proprietary educational institution, 200,000. And contributions to a party list candidate, 300,000. So, required, determine the taxpayer's taxable income. So, para makuha ang taxable income ni taxpayer, so, yung sales na 10 million, less mo yung cost of sales na 4 million, less yung operating expense na 3 million. So, net income before contributions is 3 million. Tapos, deductible in full naman yung contributions to government per priority project. So, i-deduct mo yung lahat, 200,000. Tapos, meron din deductible with limit na contribution, which is yung 200,000. Since corporate taxpayer ito, so 5% yung gagamitin natin na rate. So 3 million times 5% is equals to 150,000. So ang ginagamit dito is the lower amount sa actual and the limit. So since mas lower amount yung limit, so 150,000 yung i-deduct natin. So, 3 million minus 200,000 minus 150,000 equals to 2,650,000. So, yun na yung taxable income ni taxpayer. So, baka nagtataka kayo kung saan nanggaling yung 200,000. So, nanggaling siya sa contribution to government for public purpose na 100,000 and yung contribution to domestic charitable institution na 100,000 with a total of 200,000 pesos. Then, case B naman, kung halimbawa individual taxpayer naman yun. Magkano? So, magkano ang taxable income niya kung individual taxpayer naman siya? Assume the same data in case A except that the taxpayer is a resident citizen. So, required, determine the taxpayer's taxable income. So, sales pa rin na 10 million minus cost of sales na 4 million minus operating expense na 3 million. So, equals 3 million. So, deductible in full pa rin yung 200,000. Then, dito na mag-iiba yung rate kasi nga, individual siya. So, ang rate na gagamitin natin is 10%. So, 3 million times 10% equals 300,000. So, since mas maliit yung actual na amount na 200,000, so, yun yung gagamitin natin. Kasi nga, 300,000 mas malaki sa 200. So, 3 million minus 200,000 minus 200,000 equals to 2,600,000. So, yun yung taxable income ni individual taxpayer. So, BIR verification. So, BIR verification na tayo. So, donors claiming donations and contributions to accredited non-stock, non-profit corporation or NGO as deductions from their taxable business income should submit evidences or proofs to the BIR by showing the certificates of donations and indicating therein the following. So, nagbibigay dapat ng certificates of donation. Dapat isa-submit yun sa BIR. Tapos, naka-indicate doon yung actual receipt by the accredited non-stock, non-profit corporation or NGOs of the donation or contribution and the date of receipt thereof, and the amount of the charitable donation or contribution if in cash. If property naman, whether real or personal, the acquisition cost of the said property yung ilalagay. So, may parts of certificate of donation. So, yung parts of certificate of donations, merong dalawa. So, donee certification and donor's statement of values. So, dito na tayo sa research and development. So, a taxpayer may treat research and development expenditures which are paid or incurred by him during the taxable year in connection with his trade, business, or profession as ordinary and necessary expenses, which are not chargeable to capital account. The expenditures so treated shall be allowed as deduction during the taxable year when paid or incurred. So research and development shall not apply to any expenditure for the acquisition of improvement of land or for the improvement of property to be used in connection with research and development of a character which is subject to depreciation and depletion. And any expenditure paid or incurred for the purpose of ascertaining the existence, location, extent, or quality of any deposit or other mineral, including oil or gas. So if not, so mamaya ko na yung explain explain ko na yun sa next slide. So, if not chargeable to capital account, makiklaim siya as outright expense. Tapos, if chargeable naman siya to capital account, but not chargeable to property subject to depreciation or depletion, may option si taxpayer. Option 1 niya ay claim niya as outright expense. Tapos, option 2, i-amortize niya over 60 months or kung i-convert natin sa years is 5 years. Tapos, if chargeable naman siya to property subject to depreciation or depletion, pwede naman siya i-capitalize naman. So, these are the limitations on deduction. So, the following research and development expenditures are not deductible. Number 1, any expenditure for the acquisition or improvement of land or for the improvement of property to be used in connection with research and development of a character which is subject to depreciation and depletion. So, kung ang mga expenditure yung mga expenditure na connected sa research and development na subject naman sa depreciation and depletion, hindi yun siya ma-allow as deduction. Kasi nga, for depreciation and depletion yun. Hindi yun siya for research and development talaga. Number 2, any expenditure paid or incurred for the purpose of ascertaining the existence, location, extent, or quality of any deposit of ore or other mineral including oil or gas. So, yung expenditure na na-incur mo for the purpose of ascertaining the existence, location, extent, quality, yung for the purpose of hanapin mo yung or i-sure mo yung kung meron ba talaga or nag-exist ba talaga yung nakita mo na pwedeng pagminahan or location ng other mineral including oil or gas. So next, dito na tayo sa pension trust contributions. So, wait mo. So, pension trust. Pension trust is a trust established to provide financial administration or a pension or retirement fund. So, merong isang pondo na itinatag para sa mga employee. Para sakaling dumating yung age of retirement nila, meron silang matatanggap. So, itong pension na to, established to by the employer. So, hindi yung employer naman yung mga ngasiwa or mga ngalaga nung pondo na yun. Kasi meron silang assign doon na mga ngasiwa doon sa fund. So, ang tawag doon ay yung trust. So, yung pension trust contributions, mag-claim yun as deduction. So, merong requisites dito. Number 1, the employer must have established a pension or retirement plan to provide for the payment of reasonable pensions of his employees. So, dapat si employer, meron siyang established na pension plan or retirement plan. So, dapat reasonable naman yun or angkop naman yun sa pangangailangan or sapat sa pangangailangan ng empleyado. So, number 2, the pension plan is reasonable and actuarially sound. So, ito yung reasonable, yung sinabi ko, dapat sapat yung sa pangangailangan ng empleyado. Reasonable yung pension plan na yun. Tapos, actuarially sound. Ditong actuarially sound, nakadepende siya sa actuarian. Itong actuarian naman, siya yung nagkikwenta ng pension na matatanggap ni employee. So, isa siyang professional na naka-assign dun sa pagkikwenta ng pension ni employee. So, based on professional judgment, yung actuarially sound. So, number 3, it must be funded by the employer. So, yun nga sabi ko, dapat funded siya ni employer, hindi ni employee. Kasi kung si employee yung nag-fund or ka-employee binabawas yung pension na yun, so hindi na siya mako-consider as deduction. Number 4, the amount contributed must be no longer subject to the control and disposition of the employer. So, dapat yung pension fund na yun, o yung contribution na yun, dapat hindi na yun kayang kunin ni employer, I mean. Dapat hindi na niya makokontrol yung nasa fund. Kasi nga, kung kaya pa niyang kunin yun, or kaya pa niyang galawin yun, so hindi na yun siya makoconsider as deduction. And number 5, the payment has not yet been allowed as deduction. So, dapat yung payment, hindi pa siya na-deduct noon. So, ngayon pa lang, first time pa lang siya na-deduct ngayon. Kasi nga, kung palagi kang mag-deduct ka naman ngayon, mag-deduct ka naman the next. So, marami ng deduction. So, malulugi na yung BIR noon. Then, number 6, the deduction is apportioned in equal parts over a period of 10 consecutive years, beginning with the year in which the transfer of payment is made. So, itong 6 related to siya doon sa past service cost na i-discuss ko naman mamaya. So, babalikan natin yung 6, requisite 6. So, amount deductible, so actual contribution to the extent of pension liability plus amortization of past service cost equals total. Yun na nga yung amount deductible, yung total. So, pension liability. Pension liability is equivalent to normal cost or present service cost. So, itong present service cost, or natawag rin natin na normal cost, ito yung cost na deductible in full siya in section 34. So, these are contributions during taxable year to cover the pension liability accruing during taxable year. So, ito yung contribution sa pondo or sa pension fund na nangyari ngayong taon. So, currently siya nangyari. So, dahil nagtatrabaho yung employee ngayon, so, si employer, binabayaran niya o sinisweldohan niya si employee. At the same time, naguhulog din si employer dun sa retirement fund ng employee niya. So, kung kailan yung trabaho, dun siya naguhulog. So, yun yung present service cost. Dapat current. Then, ito namang past service cost. Past service cost is the excess of actual contributions over normal costs. So, it shall be amortized over 10 years. So, ito na yung sinasabi ko na connected siya sa requisite 6 na deduction is a portion in equal parts over a period of 10 consecutive years beginning with the year in which the transfer of payment is made. So, past service cost, contribution pertaining to all employees during previous or before establishment of fund. So, explain ko. Diba? Nag-contribute ka talaga. So, let's say, sa isang taon, nagbigay ka ng 10,000 doon sa fund. Tapos, dinagdagan mo ng 2,000. So, 12,000 na siya. So, yung sobra na 2K, yun yung past service cost. So, halimbawa, yung entity, walang established na pension fund. And then, naisipan nila na magbigay na ng fund sa employee in the middle of operation. Kasi nga, hindi din naman ma-deduct yung pension fund kung hindi nila i-establish. So, nag-establish sila ng pension fund. So, and then ikaw na employee na matagal na nagtatrabaho, example, 15 years ka na nagtrabaho, so dinagdagan nila yung matatanggap ni employee kasi nga walang hulog doon sa past years. So, ngayon, di ba? Ngayon, naghulog ka ng yun nga, 10,000 pesos. Tapos, para mahabol mo yung years, yung past years na hindi mo nahulugan, dadagdagan mo yung dapat na matanggap ni employee. So, dagdagan mo na ba ng 5,000. So, yun na yung past service cost. So, kung malaki naman siya, malaki yung nadagdag mo, malaki yung amount na nalagay mo sa pension fund, hindi mo siya makiklaim sa establishment period. Bakit? So, hindi siya mag-claim as deduction sa establishment period kasi nga malaki siya. So, dapat yung deduction is apportioned in equal parts over a period of 10 consecutive years beginning with the year in which the transfer of payment is made. So, since malaki yung dapat madidak sa'yo, hindi naman yun pwede na malaki yung madidak, biglang malaki yung madidak sa'yo. So, i-apportion yun in equal parts over 10 periods hanggang sa madidak na siya. So, punta tayo sa illustration 12. Case A, corporate taxpayer. An employer maintains pension trust for its employees. So, the following contributions are made. Dito na. Current service cost for 2019, 500,000. For 2020, 500,000. For 2021, 500,000. Past service cost for 2019, 600,000. For 2020, 700,000. For 2021, 500,000. So, required, determine the deductible pension contributions for 2019, for 2020, and for 2021. So, an employer maintains pension trust for its employees. So, the following contributions are made. So, current service cost na 500 from 2019, plus yung 2020 na 500, yung 2021 na 500. So, para makuha yung deductible expense mo from the year 2019, 2020, 2021, diba sabi nga, kung malaki yung kung malaki yung service cost, past service cost, kailangan siyang i-apportion over 10 years. So, since sa 2019, 600 siya, 600,000 divide 10 equals 60,000. So, 500,000 na current service cost ng 2019 plus 60,000 na past service cost equals 560,000 na deductible expense sa 2019. Sa 2020 naman, so 500,000 na current service cost plus yung 60,000 dun sa 2019 na past service cost. So 560,000 na siya. Tapos, meron din namang past service cost si 2020, which is 700,000. So, divide mo siya sa 10,000, which is equals to 70,000. So, 560 plus 70,000 equals 630,000. So, ito na yung deductible expense ni 2020. Si 2021 naman, 500,000 plus yung 60 na from 2019, plus yung 70 from 2020, tapos plus yung 50 na from 2021 na derived from 500,000 divide 10, so is equals to 680,000 na deductible expense sa 2021. So, premium payment on life insurance of employees taken out by the employer or corporation. So, if ang beneficiary is employee or ang heirs, deductible expense of the employer and taxable income naman of the employee. Tapos, yung proceeds received by the employee's heirs is exclusion from gross income. So, excluded siya sa gross income. Kapag ang beneficiary naman ay employer, non-deductible expense of the employer. And yung proceeds received by the employer or corporation is included naman from taxable income. So, other allowable deductions under special laws. So, RA 9994, Magna Carta for Senior Citizens, and RA 7277, Magna Carta for PWDs. So, discounts granted for PWDs or person with disabilities and senior citizens. So, law allows the establishment to claim the discount as tax deductions based on net cost of goods sold or service rendered. So, gina-allow ni law na ma-claim yun as discounts. Gina-allow nila yung discounts as tax deduction. Pero dapat naka-based on net cost of goods sold and service rendered. Then, cost of discount shall be allowed as deductions from gross income for same taxable year the discount is granted. Then, total amount of claimed tax deduction net of VAT if applicable, shall be included in the gross sales receipts subject to proper documentation and provisions of NIRC. So, ito yung dapat na nakalagay sa sales record nila. So, name of the person with disabilities or senior citizen, his or her PWD or senior citizen ID number, and his or her tax identification number if applicable. So these rules shall apply to 20% discount on sale of certain goods and services, 5% discount on basic and prime commodities, and input tax attributable to VAT exempt sale may be claimed by seller as cost or expense. So yun siya. Then other allowable deductions under special laws. So RA 8525, Adopt a School Program. Deduction from the gross income of the amount of contribution or donation that were actually, directly, and exclusively incurred for the program, subject to limitations, conditions, and rules set forth in Section 34H of the Tax Code, plus an additional amount equivalent to 50% of such contribution or donation. So, ma-allow as deduction from gross income yung amount ng contribution or donation na directly na-incur galing dun sa school program, pero subject to limitation siya. Subject to limitation siya nang ibigay ni Section 34H Tax Code. Tapos plus yung additional amount na equivalent to 50% of the contribution. Then RA 7600, an act providing incentives to all government or private health institutions with rooming, in and breastfeeding practices. So expenses incurred by a private health and non-health facility, establishment, or institution in complying with the provision of this act shall be deductible expenses for income tax purposes up to twice the actual amount incurred. So, kapag yung expenses na na-incur ng private health and non-health facility na nag-comply naman sa provision of the act, deductible expense siya, allowed siya as deductible sa income tax up to, pwede pa hanggang sa twice the actual amount of incurred. Pwede mo siyang i-deduct twice. Then next, ito na yung special deductions under Section 37 of the Tax Code. So, under insurance companies, net additions required by law to be made within the year to reserve funds, and the sums other than dividends paid within the year on policy and annuity contracts. So, naka-indicate sa Section 37 of Tax Code na may special deductions allowed to insurance companies in the case of insurance companies, whether domestic or foreign, doing business in the Philippines, the net additions, if any, required by law to be made within the year to reserve funds, and the sums other than dividends paid within the year on policy and annuity contracts may be deducted from their gross income, provided, however, that the released reserve be treated as income for the year of release. And then, mutual insurance companies. So, in the case of mutual insurance companies and mutual employers liability and mutual worksmen compensation or mutual casualty insurance companies requiring their members to make premium deposits to provide for losses and expenses, said companies shall not return as income any portion of the premium deposits returned to their policyholders, but shall return as taxable income all income received by them from all other sources, plus such portion of their premium deposits are retained by the companies for purposes other than the payment of losses and expenses and reinsurance services. So, any portion of their premium deposits returned to their policyholders. Letter C, mutual marine insurance company. So, mutual marine insurance companies shall include in their return of gross income, gross premiums collected and received by them, less amounts paid for reinsurance, but shall be entitled to include in the deduction from the gross income amounts repaid to policyholders on account of premiums previously paid by them and interest paid upon those amounts between the ascertainment and payment thereof. And letter C, assessment insurance companies. So, assessment insurance companies, whether domestic or foreign, may deduct from their gross income the actual deposit of sums within the officers of the government of the Philippines pursuant to law as additions to guarantee or reserve fund. Then, let's proceed to deductions for mixed income. So, deductions should be identified with the income to which they pertain. But where there are deductions which cannot be clearly identified with any source of income, unallocated deduction. So, kung yung deduction, hindi mo clearly identified kung saan siya na source of income. So, ito yung formula, allocation. Philippine gross income divided by gross income world times unallocated deductions equals Philippine deduction. So that would end my report. So thank you for watching.